And turn with me to Proverbs chapter 17. That's where we're going to start. Proverbs chapter 17. Now again, our subject here is guiding our children towards good friends. Guiding them. That's very intentional wording there. Guiding them. You can't make your student become kind of like a video game where you have the controls and they obey your commands. But you want to guide them and help navigate them towards good friends. And there's many biblical principles we're going to go through tonight. The first one I want you guys to see is that a good friend goes through tough times. A good friend goes through tough times. Look at verse 17. Proverbs 17:17 says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." So, friends in general are hard to find. Good friends that go through difficult stuff with you, even harder to find. But what is a promise in this verse that we will all face? Adversity. Yeah, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. Adversity will come. In fact, Jesus says in John 16:33, "In this world you will have trouble. You'll have tribulation. You'll have hardship. You'll have adversity." And our kids are going to face that. They will face that. But through this, adversity will help them see who are some good friends that are going to stick with them through difficult stuff. That is a good friend. So the word adversity, I looked it up in Webster's. It says a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. Now notice, this is not just a kind of a one-time occurrence. It's not just every now and then, but it's an ongoing thing. Some of your kids may be going through some difficult things with bullies in the school, with their grades, with pressures. And so for good friends to stick with them through it is a marker of having that good friend. Now, not only should we point them towards good friends, but they also need to be those kind of good friends to their buddies. Yeah. Exactly. Now, I had a few good friends in high school. I went through probably a 2-year-long stint with depression, just constantly feeling numb, constantly feeling isolated and lonely. And I had some good friends who every now and then would ask me, "Hey, how you doing?" Now, these weren't the best of friends because after I said, "Oh, I'm doing okay," they would find a way to insult me. So they meant well, but they didn't really have the depth or maturity to go beyond that. But they at least asked me, "Hey, how you doing?" They could see my countenance was low. And so they asked those kind of questions. So teach your kids even to ask those kind of questions. Hey, if you notice one of your friends or a classmate is not doing great, you may not even know them too well. Just ask them, "Hey, are you feeling okay? Are you doing all right? What's going on?" Because the teachers will know to do that, but it means even more when peers do that for one another. And we can even model that in the home. They'll pick up on that. They do already, right? They're like a sponge. Whatever they hear us say and see us do, a lot of times they end up doing. So we can model this and do this well. Last thing I'll say about this is when I was going through this stint of depression for those 2 years, the best thing I had in my life was people. They invited me to stuff. I wasn't alone. They checked in on me every now and then. Again, not the most mature, not the most respectable kids, but they actually invited me to stuff and asked me to be a part of their lives. Okay? So these are good friends. Now go with me up to Proverbs 17:9. Proverbs 17:9. Somebody read that for us.
Whoever conceals an offense promotes love, but whoever gossips about it separates friends.
Here's what this verse is talking about. This verse is talking about not airing somebody's dirty laundry. Just because we know information about all the wrong things our friends have done or said does not mean it gives us the right to say, "Hey, you know what so-and-so has done?" Because in our world, that is a huge issue. Whenever somebody who's of importance does something dumb, says something dumb, lets something slip, the world knows about it. And our kids see that. And so rather than say, "Hey, that's kind of funny," instead we should say, "Hey, even though I don't respect this person on the news that's going through a hard time, maybe I even feel like they deserve it, it doesn't mean that their stuff needs to be aired for the world to see." And the same is true with your kids. No one wants to go through that when they make mistakes. Now, does this mean that we cover up sin? If there's sin in the life, say your friends or your kids have some friends who, man, they're just saying some really mean things. They're bullying somebody. They're not doing right. Do we just cover that up? No. We address it personally, and we love on them. Our kids do that. But it doesn't need to mean that everyone needs to know about it. That's what this verse is saying. Not everybody needs to know. One commentator says this. He says, if we tell someone's failings to others, not only can we lose our closest friends, but we could also lose the friends who we shared about our other friend's mistake with. That's a little confusing. The idea there is if we share that with a group of friends, we can lose that group of friends that we gossiped about that one friend with. So not only can we lose that friend we gossiped about, but the friends we're sharing with, the friends we're even sharing with. So in helping guide our kids towards these friends, you can tell them, avoid being friends with those who gossip. Because what's going to happen is you hang out with those kids, more than likely, they're going to backstab every single one of those friends they're sharing gossip with. That's just the reality of it all. Like, it doesn't matter how close some of those kids feel to each other. They have a proclivity for the laugh, for the thrill, for whatever reason, to gossip about their friends. And that's one thing we can tell our kids, hey, avoid that type of friend group. Avoid that. So, one thing we should all be mindful of, and I have to watch myself too, whenever there's a news story that I hear about, and I read all this stuff, it's easy for me to make assumptions and say to Molly, like, man, this is a horrible person. I hope they get the worst. When honestly, there's times where I just need to say, hey, let's pray for such and such person. I know that seems like the typical thing to do, but how often do we pray for people in power that life is not going so great for them? We may not like that politician. We may not like that celebrity, but they need prayer just as much as we do. The more eyes you have, the harder life becomes. The more people watching you, the harder it is. And so we need to set that example. So when we talk at the dinner table about things in the news or relationships at work, just be mindful. Our kids hear that, and we model that for them, and they'll take it wherever they go. So this part's free. When it comes to watching TV and hearing about what's going on in our world, my suggestion to you is we live in days that are very polarizing. The left is all the way over here bashing the right, and the right is over here bashing the left. I think wisdom would say we need to limit our intake, because what we watch, and many times, is what we become. What we fill ourselves up with is what comes out of us. And so we live in polarizing days. Not that we should avoid it, but we need to have limits on how much we intake. All right, second thing I want us to see. So we talked about good friends sticking through difficult times. Second thing I want us to see is that good friends strengthen others. So go to the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 10. And if I could have somebody read that.
Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their efforts. For if either falls, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to lift him.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Before I really looked into this passage, I thought this was only about friendships. While this is about friendships and other relationships, it's actually also about someone who isolates himself because he loves riches. This is about someone who isolates himself because he loves riches. Now, what this passage is saying is two is better than one, because one person who loves stuff, loves the things of this world, will not only have a hard time seeing that he has an issue, but also getting up out of that issue. So we need good friends to help us see our own shortcomings. This is why our kids need good friends that help strengthen them, that help them in their walk with Jesus. Now, in middle school and high school, a lot of times our kids may not have the boldness to speak truth, but many times they're believing these things, thinking about these things, and they can stand firm in these things. And so they can help their friends out although they may not always have the perfect thing to say, they at least have the desires that we've fed them from the church, from their personal time with God, and from our conversations. So when those moments come, they can speak into those situations. Because the Holy Spirit lives in all believers. And He can do more than we can ask, think, or imagine. And that's such a good reminder that we all need one another to help us out and to get us out of sin patterns and addictive ways. Now, go with me to Proverbs 27:9. Proverbs 27:9. Somebody read that verse for us.
Oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend.
So oil for first century Jewish people was more than just, for cooking. They use oil to make candles. They use oil for their skin. They use oil for so many different things. So they had multiple purposes. And oil was like something people, longed for, like salt was back then. Salt were like, you can get it anywhere. But these are things they really cherished and needed. Not only was it oil, but also perfume. Both of those things benefited others. Now, perfume, as you can guess, has its benefit just as it does today. It helps us smell better. Surprise, surprise. No, there's not a lot of depth in that answer there. But oil and perfume, they are good things, and those things make people glad. The same is true with a friend who gives good counsel. And not only good counsel, but actually selfless counsel. That's a good friend. When you have a friend who is thinking not first and foremost about themselves, but others, that is a good friend. And not only should our kids look for those kind of friends, but they also need to be those kind of friends. I'm probably going to say that like 10 more times tonight. Not only should they look for them, but they need to be those kind of friends. So they need to be those kind of friends who are selfless, who do take the time to give good counsel. And one thing you can do in the home is help your kids decipher good and bad counsel. Because more than likely, they're going to bring up a story about something that happened at school and something someone said to somebody else that sounded like great advice, when really our discernment as parents says, not so much. Yeah. So we can help them sift through these things at the dinner table, in the car, wherever we're at. We can help them know, hey, that's good counsel, or there's some holes in that. Let's talk through that together. Okay? Proverbs 27. Let's go back to Proverbs. Proverbs 27, verse 17. This is probably the most quoted verse in the whole Bible. Well, sorry. This is probably the most quoted verse in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 27:17. Can somebody read that?
Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Yeah. So we've heard that, but what does that really mean? Think about that for a second. What does that verse really mean? Iron sharpens iron. What is that? Don't feel ashamed. I have no background in weapons. Had to look up the answer here.
Use an iron file to sharpen an iron sword.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when two objects of iron meet one another, they do a work of sharpening each other. And the same is true with two good friends. Yes?
I'm thinking of two people who are like-minded, two people who have the same beliefs can help hold each other accountable.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's like the example at the end of service I gave, C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien. If you don't know those two guys, these guys were phenomenal writers of story. So much so that obviously we know J.R. Tolkien's movies, Lord of the Rings, as well as The Hobbit, came out of his writings. And with C.S. Lewis, Narnia, as well as all his writings on apologetics. So those were phenomenal guys, and they helped sharpen one another, not only in their skills of writing, but also in their faith. And this is a good thing to have. I think one of the reasons God gives us hobbies and other things we enjoy to do outside of work is so we can bond with other people. And at least for me, what I've observed about most guys is we don't naturally gravitate towards conversation and sitting down. But when you get us around a hobby or some task like that, there's an instant bond there. So, little shout out to the next men's work day. If you're a guy in here, be a part of that. That's a great chance to bond and invite other men to come in close and build that relationship with one another. So this is exactly what this is talking about. They sharpen each other. They're like-minded, and they're building each other up. Now, when I was in elementary school, I had some friends with me that honestly I needed to get away from. I had some friends, once I got to 3rd, 4th grade, they taught me every way to say every bad word in the book, including not only in English, but also in Spanish. I didn't start cheating on my tests till I got around these friends. I didn't start behaving in such a negative way towards my teachers until I got around these friends. So they had a real bad impact on my life. And I started to tell my mom about these friends, and she helped me, as my mom, create distance. Now, I wasn't super mature, and I honestly wasn't very vocal or bold, but I was able to start hanging less with these friends and more with friends who helped me study so I wouldn't cheat, who helped me be mindful of how I respected others. And this is one of the ways we can guide our kids is, hey, you're saying all these things, and while I can't be in your class to say, hey, Billy, go away, hey, teacher, give this kid time out. But you can help them with wisdom, impart wisdom in them. So instead of hanging out with such and such kid, they're hanging out with this group that builds them up, that helps them out. Now, pause for a moment. Our kids are to be a light, and that's true. They are to be a light. But we have to also consider the influence and impact our kids make versus the negative influence and impact that's made on them. My wife had a mentor for a bit in high school, and this mentor talked to her about dating relationships. I hope I don't hurt myself doing this. But she gave my wife an example, and she said, hey, do this for a second. She said, I want you to get on top of a chair. We'll use a stool. Pray for me. And I want you to think real quick, what's easier to do? Is it easier for you to pull someone up towards you? Or is it easier for them to bring you down to them? Yeah. And these are the things we have to consider when it comes to our kids' lives. Is the negative impact pulling them down? Is it harder for them to swim upstream against the current? And do they need to pull back? Or are they still able to be a light without being effective negatively? Now, granted, the illustration was for a dating relationship. When you have a believer and a non-believer in a dating relationship, it is much easier to be pulled down than to pull them up where you are. But I think that carries over into friendships. So, something to think through. Actually, let me pull it closer because this is my table. So we need to be mindful of that. They want to be a light, but we also have to use wisdom. Proverbs 27, go there with me. Proverbs 27, 5 through 6. Somebody read that verse, those verses for us.
Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy.
Yeah. Now, this is a tough one. This is a tough verse. Everyone needs friends who are going to say tough things to them. But they got to do it with gentleness and kindness. Because there's some people in your life you've met, and it's like they mean well, but the way they go about it is like, ow, that hurt. And it takes you like a week to recover once they said it. So there's some tactfulness when it comes to being honest. There's brutally honest, which, hey, I get it. Some of us are from that background and we take it well. Others of us, man, just a little more seasoning with salt and say the same thing. And man, that'll get me off onto a good start ahead of time. Let's try to move our kids in that direction where they say what's true, but not necessarily hit somebody over the head with it. They say what's true while also being kind and gentle and loving, because these are honestly aspects of the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Notice gentleness is in there, love is in there, faithfulness is in there. All those are important. So if we kind of say, well, this is kind of my disposition, this is just how I was raised, well, if we're a believer, we got to go back to what the Scriptures say. Is it loving? Is it joyful? Is it patient? Is it kind? And let that be our guide more than it's just the way I am. You got to get used to it. we got to go back to what God says and let God change us, mold us, and shape us. So this is what we want to lead our kids in as well. One commentator says this: true love for another person should result in occasional confrontation and correction, if needed, but false love, hear this, it's that kind of kiss of the enemy. False love simply just lets things go without correction in order to selfishly avoid conflict. There's a time and a place for conflict, but it's got to be done well. It's got to be done well. When I was a kid, our elementary school gave away like these magazines on history and politics, and I had a habit of goofing off because, again, around my immature friends, and I was one of them, and I would draw just the worst things you can imagine in these magazines. And I had a good friend of mine. He was over at my house one day, and I thought it was hilarious what I was drawing in these magazines. And I showed him, and I thought, he's going to laugh too. Well, he shocked me because he said, hey, I'm going to go tell your mom. I was like, what? You're going to tell my mom? What? We're friends. Don't betray me. Don't do this. While he didn't do it tactfully, he did care about my sin problem. Because he was going to tell my mom, like, look at your son. Not that he would say it in those words, but hey, look what Matt did. He's in trouble, you know? And it just weirded me out. But here's what that did. Because my friend almost told on me, what I did was I begged him. I was basically crying tears just to get him not to do this. Because my friend almost told my mom, it stopped me from being a moron, at least in that kind of way. Yeah. Because my friend cared about me. He didn't have anything to gain out of that. In fact, that could have hurt the way I viewed him. But because he cared more about what I was doing rather than, just let this go, he wanted to tell my mom. And that helped me. Honestly, it really, really did. I started to be more mindful about things I said and did because of that situation. So help your kids in this way. Be around friends, and also be that kind of friend who's honest, who cares about sin patterns and stuff that's going on in their life, and is able to say, hey, because I care about you, I don't want you to go this way. I don't think it's wise you're around this crowd. Instead, hey, let's think about the things that are better. Yeah. Okay, here's the third thing. And then we got one more, which will be short and simple and sweet, and it'll wrap it all up, and I'm going to give you guys some time to talk. It's 4:55 right now, so we have about 35 minutes left of our time. Okay, third thing I want you to see comes from Proverbs 18:24. And what I want you to see there, the third thing, is that a few good friends are better than many friends. A few good friends are better than many friends. Can somebody read Proverbs 18:24?
A man of too many friends comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother.
Yeah. A commentator says this about this verse. He says, is it unwise to have too many friends? No, but this proverb warns that if a person has too many friends, it's possible some of those friends are not going to be good friends. They're going to be false friends, not even real friends. And this means they could be not good for them or just neutral. They have no positive impact in your kid's life. I really like this quote. It says, the significance of friends is found in their quality, not in their quantity. Quality over quantity. And I know we're not talking about dating relationships today, but I listened to this podcast, and the interviewer had asked, or was in a conversation with a friend of hers, and they were talking about this dating relationship that her friend had got in, and what the interviewer noticed was that her friend was only talking about compatibility, which is a good thing. You want to be compatible with the person you're dating, and eventually in marriage you want to be compatible. But one thing that she noticed her friend was missing was the character this guy had. And so she asked her, like, hey, you're telling me about all the things you enjoy doing together, but tell me about this guy's character. And she's like, wait, what do you mean? His character? She hadn't even thought of that. And how often, even ourselves, and I'm not trying to cast shame on anybody in here, but maybe you even were dating your spouse early on and you thought more about compatibility than character. I had done that several times early on in dating in high school and through college. I thought more about, man, we just get along, we click, we're great, rather than, man, is this person going to sharpen me? Is this person going to lead me towards the things that are good? Does this person have good character? And I think that's true of friends. Are kids thinking about good character, not just, hey, they're available as friends, let's just hang out because we play this sport together. Let's just hang out because we're in this class together. Or are they thinking quality of their friendship? Quality of their friendship. In high school, one of the things I was always aware of when I walked down the hall was how many shout outs I got. Like I was like, oh, I know that guy on the basketball team, and that guy on the football team said what's up to me. But what's funny was 95% of them I never hung out with at all. I just knew them because they were in a class. And how easy is it for our kids to think, man, because so many people know me, I have good friendships. But instead, what they need is quality time with a few people. They need quality time with a few good people. And so even early on with younger kids, even in the teenage years, are you like suggesting to them, hey, I know such and such person. Do you want to hang out with them sometime? Or, hey, you know that kid, they seem to be real upstanding. You want to hang out with them sometime? Just suggesting that, putting it out there and trying to help them, guide them towards these kind of friends. Now, I'm going to pause just for a second. How's y'all's experience been when it comes to like helping your kids like be guided towards good friendships? Because that can be tricky.
The most difficult thing that I've encountered right now is the seeming, the hyper focus on the friendships that aren't.
Oh,
instead
okay.
of the friendships that are.
Right.
But I'm not friends with this person, and I'm not friends with this person. Not that that person's cool or anything but the hyper focus with, so and so didn't say anything to me today, or I haven't heard from someone in 3 weeks. Okay, but you just talked to this person,
Yeah.
yesterday. But I haven't heard from that person in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the dynamic that I don't understand. That's been difficult for me, is the hyper focus on what doesn't happen instead of the stuff that is right there occurring.
Yeah. So missing out on relationships, and why isn't that relationship a thing, rather than, hey, I got some friends and we both enjoy our company.
Yep.
Okay. This is tough, and I also want to make a distinction here. This is not helicopter parenting, right? So if you got that feeling from what I was suggesting, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying be so, hovered over your kids that it's like, no, you can do this, you can't do this, can't do that, can't hang out with that person. Because what's going to happen is they're going to get in their teenage years and feel so stifled. That's going to be like, man, I'm just frustrated about everything. I can't do anything. So I'm saying guide, not force. Guide, suggest, encourage. These are kind of words that I want to put front and center. Kim?
My kids are grown and married now and have kids of their own. However, I can tell you that when they were in high school, their best friends were found in the church youth group. And they remained friends for a long time. And the thing is, when they're making friends in the church youth group, you can be around. You can chaperone events, you can get to know the other person's parents, and that's super important. That's one of the reasons that my husband and I were so involved in youth, is we didn't want to be in their business, but we wanted to be afar, seeing who they were making friends with, seeing who they were hanging out with. And one other thing about my son that I thought was very wise, when he was in high school, he played basketball. And I knew that the basketball guys, the players, were getting together on Friday nights. So one time I asked him, I said, Kyle, wouldn't you like to go and hang out with some of the guys from your basketball team? You could get to know them better. I know I've heard them talking about going out on Friday nights. He looked at me and he said, Mom, he said, you would not approve of the things that they are doing, and I don't either, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Mm.
And I looked at him and I said, I will never ask you that again, because I know that I can trust you to make wise decisions.
That's awesome. That's so good. Yeah, that's one of the things about encouraging and guiding them is they will get this filter through which they see friend groups and see individuals. Not that they want to make them enemies, because we don't want them to be like,
he was
and I'm not saying that either.
cordial with them, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a way to be
Wasn't gonna hang
cordial.
with them.
Right. But there's a way to not allow that tractor beam of influence to pull them in. So it's like, man, it's really throwing them off with everything that's going on in their life.
It has to do with strength of character.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Well, I think some of these conversations will continue to happen as we discuss at the end of our time here. But I want somebody to watch the time for me. So it's 5:03 right now. I'm going to try to finish this at 5:04 now. I'm going to try to finish this at 5:09. And if I'm not paying attention to the time, just everybody go like this, and I'll just be done so you guys can talk, okay? Because that's what I said in service, and I want to stick to my word. Okay, so again, quality, not quantity. Here's the last thing. The very last thing is the most important thing. A good friend loves like Jesus. Go with me to the New Testament. We're going to look at John 15, 12 through 13. John 15, 12 through 13. And could somebody read those too?
Sorry, what was it, John?
John 15, 12 through 13.
I will.
Okay, go ahead.
This is my command, love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down his life for a friend.
Yeah.
You are my friends if you do what I command.
Yep. It's good. So good friends love like Jesus. That's the most important thing. This ties up everything nice and neat. And I could have just said that, and that would have been good. But I think the Bible has multiple steps for us to walk in. And so by looking at Proverbs and by looking at Ecclesiastes, we see how to really live this out and love like Jesus and help our kids do the same. So loving like Jesus is most important here. And Jesus' disciples here, the reason Jesus had brought this up is because they were arguing about who was the greatest. That's why Jesus brought this up. Hey, it's not about you being great. It's not about, hey, I'm the best disciple. Well, I'm the second best disciple. No. It's about loving. It's about being selfless. It's about thinking of others before thinking of ourselves. This is what Christ tried to impart to his disciples. And our kids and their friends should do the same. Think of others first before self. This is what Christ is pointing towards. And notice here that Christ is talking about what? What is the action he talks of in that second verse? No greater love a man has than this, than what? Than to
Lays down his life.
lay down his life. So not only is he talking about, hey, the relationships you have, but he's talking about his journey to the cross, that he was about to lay his life down for his friends. And he calls us friends as well. He laid his life down. He, instead of putting all the things of the world first and foremost, he considered others. And he considered God and his glory more than anything else. And this is what we want to impart to our kids, is they have that very same mindset as Christ did. And what's awesome, to make it even more cool, is that Jesus not only died for his friends, but he died for those who would betray him.
We were not his friends.
Even his enemies. And that's the great thing about who Christ is not only did he love friends, but he loved those who rejected him. And that's one thing we can impart to our kids too. Love on them. Kill them with kindness. Keep loving on people who are mean, hurtful gossipers. And while that's hard, we can help our kids walk through that. Again, not saying, hey, only hang out with these people so they get saved. We don't want to expose our kids and them get pulled in by that tractor beam, but we want them to be an influence and impact in certain ways. Whether it's being kind with nothing in return, whatever that looks like. Being nice to the bully, praying for the bully, whatever that is. And I think there's a way that we can honor Christ in our parenting and helping our kids love Jesus. So, My timer just said 5:08, so I'm good. And I'm sticking to my word. All right, here we go. I got 1 minute. I'm going to give you 3 points of application. If you want to write these down, I think they're super helpful. First thing I think we can do is model this in the home. Model this in the home. All that we talked about tonight about guiding our kids towards good friends, we start by modeling this in the home. So they look for friends who have similar relationships that they have with you. Help your kids look for the kind of relationship you have with them in their friends. So we can model that in the home. Second thing is talk with them about Jesus. Talk with our kids about Jesus. It may feel awkward at first, but start having gospel conversations with our kids. They may even be believers, but start talking with them more about who Jesus is. The goal of Christianity is not just get saved and wait for Jesus to return, but the goal of Christianity is get saved in order to walk with him, to follow him. If you love me, you'll obey my commands. Jesus said this. So talk with them about Jesus. Pray with them. And as they navigate friendships, check in with them. Just check in with them. Hey, how's that going? All right, I need to finish this because it's 5:09. Third and last thing, is have something in place, like family worship time. We talked about that a time or two ago, family worship time, where each week or every other week, you're coming back to something that centers them on Christ. One of the reasons we emphasize family worship time is because without that, what do we use to gauge how they're really doing? Yes, there's times, yes, there's occasions, but let me mention this. You guys know if you have teenagers in here and you ask them how's life going, it's hard to get much of an answer. But if you have family worship time in place, something like just some kind of reading, weekly, bi-weekly, you can actually have conversations about Jesus. And it's not like I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at the Bible and we're talking about us. It's important to have that in place. So that's what I want to suggest with you suggest to you, because if they don't see all these things in us, if they don't see a love for Christ, it is likely that they won't follow through on many of the spiritual disciplines. Yeah. So I want to leave that with you guys.